you're just everything, right? I clean the rooms. I check the mail. I send out all the emails. I make sure that the programming is done for the BCBA stuff. I do assessment if I need to. Like, it's not it's not a fancy job, right? For a long time, I don't think it gets fancy.
Yeah, I feel like the second I started bringing on people was the second I became a business person rather than an educational psychologist. It's like you are, so that I love that I have group practice. I would not trade it for the world. However, it is so much more than I ever anticipated. And I think it's something that people really need to think about before they consider if they're going to do that or not,
Welcome to the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast, a podcast to empower, inspire, and collaborate with aspiring and practicing licensed educational psychologists and like-minded professionals. We're your hosts, Jana Parker and Bethany Zoeller, bringing professionals together to talk business, private practice, and find inspiration from our community.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bethany Zoeller, and
Jana Parker.
And we are super excited to have a guest with us today, Jessica Lascano, who I met through social media. That's, I think, how we interacted, Jessica. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here and telling us about how you LEP. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, well, tell us where you are, what your business is, what do you focus on?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California in a town called Claremont. It's actually a really cool city. If you ever get a chance to visit, I would recommend it. They call it the city of trees and PhDs. It has
cool.
a higher than average educated population. So it's kind of cool because you get to network with people here in the city. And I live here, and I also have my business here. And my business is Strive ABC. And the ABC stands for Assessment, Behavior Support, and Consultation.
Strive ABC.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Awesome. And how long has Strive been around?
So I opened it in July of 2022. Sorry, I had to do my math real quick. But really spent that first year just kind of preparing myself and also trying to get word out that this is something I was going to do, because I was hoping that by 2023 that we could, get some contracts. And so in 2022 through 2023, so July to July, I just did a lot of presenting and connecting with people and sharing what the vision was. And then 2023 is when we actually hired people on and started to get contracts.
Very cool. Okay, so why did you want to go this route? Why leave the schools? Why LEP?
And were you working as a school psych before that, or did you have other roles?
I worked, my last job in public schools was as a school psychologist for a county office of ed. And my main site was, two juvenile halls, one long-term, one shorter term. And I did that for several years. And then prior to that, had done a lot of community school work, ED programs. And then even my first psych gigs were a mix of counseling and psych, because I'm also a school counselor. And so I went into that. But prior to that, I was a teacher. So when I was a teacher, I was always in the behavior classes. And my first job was a non-public school. So it kind of set the tone for me. I spent about 2 decades in public education. And I always seemed to find myself with students who were having behavioral problems, challenges, things like that. And so when I went from teaching to school psychology, the reason I did it was because I felt like I had all these ideas and thoughts about kids, but I didn't feel like I was being heard. And I just knew I need to come with something else. My opinion, even though I think it's right, it's not enough. I need data. I need to be able to definitively defend the way that I feel about these kids and their potential. Because I was always sticking up for them, but I felt like nobody was really listening. And then additionally, I had this school psychologist at my site, and I'm young at this time, 22 years old. So I don't know anything, right, about anything. And I don't know how things are supposed to work. And he just wouldn't call back. He wouldn't come to triennials. He wouldn't assess kids. I mean, I'm sure there were probably 50 triennials that year that never got done with that particular school psychologist. Yeah. Nice. So I just felt so fired up about really helping kids and families, which led me to school psychology. And that same sort of situation was taking place at work. I loved my job, but then I felt like I need to step back and have a bigger impact. And I always make a joke when I do trainings and presentations, like I call myself, like what I do, I say it's the network, multi-level network marketing of education, right? Because there is a term in BCBA world, it's pyramidal. So basically you can make more impact if you're here at the top and you have people working under you, you can reach much further. And that's why I made the move from public education to my agency.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's quite the journey. You've got an
Yeah.
awesome background. That's fantastic. And it's funny, you're talking to me and Jana, and I'm going to be real. Jana and I are not behavior lovers.
Oh yeah, no, and I know, you know what, and a lot of people aren't, and I see it online too, just in the social media world. I think
Mhm.
a lot of, a lot of fears, also some misconceptions, and then also, frustrations, right? Let's just be honest, we're all human, and it can feel really frustrating when a kid does things that can be harmful or hurtful,
Sure.
physically or emotionally to other people.
Do you feel like when you're dealing with like significant behaviors that you feel like you kind of are, I don't know, energized by it? Or, does it fuel you, or does it like keep you? Because for me, even though I feel like I'm okay at dealing with behaviors, afterwards I just feel completely exhausted. So like I think just like maintaining that professionalism and not taking it personally and trying to, keep the situation safe. I always feel like afterwards I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I definitely hear that for sure. Like I too feel exhausted, but probably in a different way now because it's not just me, right? I have this whole team of people and everybody's on this kid's side. So that's the difference. It's like when you're a school psychologist and they call you in and they want you to work with behavior, they expect you to come in with the magic wand and fix that thing that's happening right now.
Right now. Yeah.
Right. And in this capacity, because I'm contracting and the districts know, like we have people that are working directly with the kids. And if there's a bigger issue, I'll come in or my supervisors will come in and we'll work together to solve the issue or to try to address it. I think there's less pressure. It's not that same kind of pressure that a psych has at a site, where the teacher's got your phone number right to your office.
Mhm.
Like, come get this kid. And you're like,
Right.
I have like a report to write right now. I'm
Yeah.
testing somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those antecedent strategies are going to be so much more effective than our response strategies, right? Like when we're in the behavior, there's not so many things we can do.
No, and then you run the risk of like actually fueling the behavior because if it's
Mhm.
attention maintained and they're getting this team that's coming to them, they got what they wanted. So that's
Yeah.
the nice thing about having a team under me is that, I can teach my team, like, this is how we identify function of behavior. This is how we're going to intervene. And they can really work on antecedent, they call it antecedent manipulation, prior to the child getting into these behavior patterns.
So tell me more about the people that you have on staff. Like what are they doing in the school, or is it in the schools? Is it in, in people's homes? Like how are you supporting them?
Yeah, right now we're in schools and we're trying to add in-home. I just feel like every day I'm like, okay, I'm about to do that credentialing packet. That's what it's called, getting credentialed with an insurance company for ABA in-home. And I keep like getting started and okay, I'll get back to it. You know how it is, right? You just push it off, but I really need to get on that. So currently we're in schools and we have contracts in 3 places now. So 2 districts that are more local and then 1 county office of education. And I think currently in schools, we have about 13, 14 people take or, add or plus or minus a number. And essentially these people get trained by myself and I have 3 supervisors and the supervisors go in and make sure that people have support, that we're implementing strategies correctly. They're giving like live feedback, and then also they do some of the kind of cleaning up of certain behaviors of our aides because we have like a lot of rules, right? You can't be on your phone. Our breaks are this long and that's how long they are. You've got to clock in, you got to be there on time. And so the supervisors make sure that they're having conversations, but our supervisors are I always say they're so patient and kind. So they don't ever like ride on somebody's back. Instead, they step back with them and they say like, our business is different and we want to show the districts that we have a higher quality product. And when we're on phones, it paints a bad picture. And also, most importantly, it takes us away from kids. So,
That's great.
little things like that, they correct it. Yeah. And so it's really cool. Again, it's like this structure and everybody knows that Jessica is going to be there for you if needed, but if we can remedy it with supervisors, we do that. And then also when people first start, they end up spending a lot of time with me because we're doing training and I'm going in there, making sure they're okay. I give them a call on their first day, et cetera, et cetera.
That's amazing. So you did all this in like a year then. I mean, it sounds like you did a whole bunch of groundwork, but in like a year's time, you've got a staff of 15 and like a hierarchy of like, that's amazing. How did you figure this out? Like, what was your guidebook for this?
I have a mentor, and she, we worked together at a SELPA. I heard, I think it was Jana, you said you were a program specialist at the SELPA in the past.
Yeah.
So was I. I was a program specialist for just a little bit. I did so many jobs in my career. And so I connected with some of the program specialists there. And there was a person who was a BCBA / special education teacher, and she had her own business. And I would go do hours with her and run social skills groups. And she would always say, Jessica, you got to do this because you care. Like because you care, this is a good field for you. There's too many people that don't care, just trying to make money, just trying to get contracts. And she's like, just do it. And I just put her off for probably like 5 years. I was like, I'm not doing that. And she's like, no, you have to. So finally we had a conversation, and she just sat down with me and she's like, what are you doing next year? And I told her like, oh, I'm going to do A, B, and C. And then she's like, no, there's districts asking for contracts right now. Email them and tell them you'll be ready. And I was like, are you sure about that? And she's like, yeah. And I did it. And that's what, this is what happened. This is what came of it. And she helps me so much. Like if I have a question, I just call her. I'm like, can you help me figure this, that, or the other out? It's tough because, and Jenny, you probably know this since you have people employed. There are a lot of pieces you don't think about: scheduling, salary, who's not going to be salary. Even with our supervisors, like we have our lead supervisor who's salaried, and I have to like be careful because he can do overtime, but not certain kind of overtime. And there's all these rules. So you got to do HR, and you have to do the non-public agency paperwork, and you have to make sure you read the contracts and make sure that they're like appropriate and something you can deliver. And then you got to stick up for your aides, right? Because if something's happening at the school and they're being mistreated or misused, you have to speak up for that, but you have to keep that balance of providing the service, keeping the relationship, but also like holding boundaries.
Yeah. I have so many questions. Sorry, can I ask a couple questions, Bethany?
Yeah, jump in.
Like, this is so interesting. Okay, first, when you do a contract with the school district, what's the scope of services that your company offers?
So it depends on the district. So currently, like one of our contracts is psychoeducational assessment plus behavior aids. So that the behavior aids is what falls under the non-public agency services. And I can talk more about that in a little bit, but generally speaking, that's why we need the NPA. It's just that the non-public agency looks good to people. So for some reason, districts equate it with being able to do psychoeducational evaluations. They have nothing to do with one another, but that's how it is. Another district or two other districts, we just provide aids. One district's like a general contract, and it's like a lump sum. Like, we have this much money in the bank for you to provide aids, and you can work up to that amount, and we'll let you know how many we need as time goes on. And they change it. They'll call me. Do you have somebody for this or that? Can we move somebody here or there? And then the third contract is actually individual to the child. We have two in that district, two children, and basically if the child's absent or if something happens, they move placement, our contract would cease.
Okay. So you're not doing FBAs.
I can. So I guess I should have mentioned that too. Yeah, that's also approved on all three of our contracts is functional behavior analysis and then also BCBA work. So essentially, when I do like case guidance or if they need me to come in and help with the FBA, I'm cleared to do that as well. It just hasn't come up as much. The thing I've done the most is really just like case analysis, helping with data collection, making sure that we have like good methodology for data collection and then presenting it, and then updating goals. And every district is different. So that's one district, whereas a different district, we offered to do data and, said, hey, we're happy to do it. And they said, no, don't do any data collection. Okay. Well, it makes our job easier, but
yeah. And then, so how do you find your How do you find your aides? And then how do you entice them? Like, why would they want to come work for you versus going to work for a school district and getting, their benefit package, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first person that came over to us was actually somebody that I had helped. So I had mentored him when he was like younger in high school. And I talked to him about becoming a teacher, a school psychologist, and then I got him linked up with my friend's company. So my friend was like, hey, that'd be a good one for you. Think about it. He could be a good lead. And sure enough, when I gave him a call and met with him, he was like, absolutely, I'd love to work for you. And, I think he had been working for about 5 or 6 years doing direct service. So he had become very familiar with what it's supposed to be like. And, some of the nuances like sign-in sheets and clock-ins and, making sure people are where they're supposed to be and the day-to-day chaos that happens, he knew all about it. So he was super helpful. And then from there, he had some friends. So he's like, oh, I have this one guy, I met him in class. Like, I think he'd be good. Do you want to interview him? And we interviewed him. And then that guy had a girlfriend. And so we interviewed her, and then her sister wanted to interview. So then we interviewed her. So it was like a lot of word of mouth. And then also I used Indeed. So I put, on Indeed and got people applying. And, some people have like great credentials, like, they have a bachelor's, they're an RBT, registered behavior tech, they've worked in behavior. Other people are like, I'm not really sure what this is, but I want to work with kids. Can you train me? And I'm like, well, as long as you're teachable and you accept feedback, we can train you. But we really care about how you're going to treat the kids. And then also like your ability to be corrected, because this is a job where you're corrected a lot and you just have to like accept that, yeah.
And
I can't remember the whole
oh,
question.
it was like, well, how, why would they
Yeah.
work for you versus working just for the school district?
Yeah. Okay. So for that, and that's a great question. And my mentor and I had this conversation, and it was like, well, first of all, school districts barrier to entry is time, right? That's the barrier. You have to be willing to wait, to sub, to kind of wait around for opportunities to open up. It's not as quick and easy as an agency. For an agency, we interview them, we do background check, we do TB test, and we get the ball rolling. So it's not like there's not such a long waiting period. Like I know certain paras and districts who've waited, 6 months. They've been subbing 6 months. They still don't have a position. So the second thing is that they get like direct live support. So unfortunately, in many districts, because they're so large, there's not really a lot of oversight for the aides. So what happens is it defers to the classroom teacher. If you have a good, strong teacher, you're going to learn good, strong skills. If you don't have a good, strong teacher, you're going to learn like, probably things that should never be done in schools, like reading a newspaper and yelling at kids. And I've seen both of those things in classrooms. So, I talk to the people that interview and I'm like, we want you to grow with the company. So that's the other thing, because we're just starting out, we can offer a lot of direct mentorship, the opportunity to become a registered behavioral tech. We do PCM training, which is professional crisis management, which is a restraint system. It's very comprehensive. It's different than CPI or PROACT. It's 3 days long. There's a physical test, there's a written test, and you're certified with the company itself, not with us. So if you go work for somebody else and do in-home, you can tell them I'm PCM certified. And PCM is great. PCMA, Professional Crisis Management Association. They actually make sure that everybody is trained very specifically every single year. And if something were to go wrong, which it never has for them and their techniques, they would actually come to court with you and back you up as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sounds like safety care a little bit. That's what I was trained.
I heard it's like QBH or something. Is that what's or Q something? Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
I think I put a mental block like as soon as I never had to do it again, and I like threw everything away, but what I liked most about those trainings, because I was a trainer of trainers for those things, like it's like the program specialists got that special job where we got to be the trainer of trainer for safety care. But what I liked about it was the escalation reduction strategies. Really, that was the most important thing that I think anybody needed to learn.
Yeah,
Why
that's
is it always that they pick the petite people to teach restraint training?
because anybody can do it. That's the proof. Anybody can do it.
I guess that's true. Good point, Jessica. Yeah, if an itty bitty person can do it, then anybody can do it. Love it. Okay.
We can get back on track. I just like had so many questions, but those were some of them. So
Well,
yeah.
I know Jessica through social media. So Jessica, you have a social media platform. Do you want to talk to us about it? Like
Yeah.
what what's the name of it?
Practical School Psychology.
Okay. How long
Yeah.
has it been around?
I think I opened it like in 2018 and kind of just I wanted to save the name because we had the idea. I was talking to a friend and we had the idea for the name. So I was like, okay, let me save the name because that's what you need to do, by the way. If you're listening and you want to make an Instagram, you better go on and save that name right now and save the Gmail and whatever else you need to save because once somebody else thinks of it, like there is a practical school psych website, but I think it's called actually I'm sorry, I think it's called Practical Psychologist. That's not me. So, somebody else had the idea, obviously, right? So I don't know when he started his, but I noticed it the other day and I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, essentially I started in 2018, but then when the pandemic started, kind of not going away, right? Because you guys all remember that Friday where you're like, yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It never happened, right? And so then I was like, okay, I have time. Let me start building this up. Let me start posting. And so in 2020 was when I really started to just put information out and try to help teach. I was also a professor at that time. I'm not a professor right now because I'm in a doctoral program and I'm just too busy. But I was getting real comfortable with like Zoom and presenting information and providing links. And so that's what propelled me into practical school psychology. And I wanted to have like a set of resources. It's kind of cool because people will ask me like, oh, hey, do you have any, resources on FBA? Or somebody texted me this morning, can you tell me what a time sampling would look like? And so I can just direct them to my post. Here you go. I just send it to them. Here's a post on that. So it's kind of like almost like a encyclopedia of sorts, I guess, get some information. And then I started doing funny stuff because even if you put like the best, most comprehensive information out on the internet, the 10-second video is going to win. So I tried to make it connect.
That's awesome. Very
I'm
cool.
horrible at social media. I'm trying, but I'm just like, I don't have time.
Yeah, it's work. It's work. I started just like going onto TikTok, looking at the trends, and then I'll just make like 5, 6 videos and put them in the wings.
Yeah.
Sketch content.
Smart.
Let me see. Are we to the last question, Jana?
Well, gosh, I mean, you might be, but I have so many more questions.
We'll ask more questions then.
Okay. So in your company, tell us about, just kind of some growing pains that you've had as you've developed a team.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you guys. When I started, one of the questions that you guys have is like, what would you tell yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I would
That
tell
is the last question, so we can start. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. It's just like, so I saved like, I want to say like $70,000. And I thought that was pretty good, right? And I actually had like 150,000, but I had invested a bunch of it. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, do this 70. And of course, the stocks kind of had tanked, right? Like the stock market went down. Like, so when I bought my stuff in like, I think 2021, they still went down significantly since that time, right? They're recovering now. But so any money that I was going to pull from that money that was in stocks is going to lose value, obviously, right? I'm going to take a loss. So I was really trying hard not to do that. So basically, when you're paying people, it's expensive, right? Jana, I think you said on, your podcast interview, you look at the bank account, you're like, wow, I'm rich. You're not rich, right?
Right.
You said that same thing, like, I'm not rich. That's a fallacy because everything's got to get paid, including all the people, including your insurance, including your, building bill. Right. So that's what I would, say was a major growing pain is essentially like I'm not kidding. I would like literally be running to Schools First, which is my credit union, to Chase to pull out just that amount of money that I needed just to be able to pay everybody on Friday. For like, it was probably about 2 months of that. And it was really, really stressful because I also quit my job, right? So I just need to have enough money to like pay my rent and pay everybody. And my kids, I was like, we're not buying anything right now. Just so you guys know, we're just chilling. We're not buying anything. And of course, I had to pay for insurance too, through the exchange, the California exchange. So that was a big growing pain. And so I would say that if you're wanting to start a company, If you're going to pay people, you need more money than you think. If you're going to just be a sole proprietor and, kind of like build on that, I think it might be a little bit less intense. But if you've got to pay people, that salary goes fast. Plus, you pay payroll tax, and payroll tax is a lot of money. You spend a lot of money on payroll tax. So, those are some things that I would say as far as growing pains that were difficult is just having, faith that things were going to work out monetarily. And oh, by the way, because districts are retroactive payers, you guys know that, so that you do the work first, you get paid later. So we didn't get our first check. We started in July and our first check from the district did not come till October. So I was like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna, die. So that was hard. So I would say that to me is like, looking back, like, okay, I wish I would have just had a little bit more money saved up. But then again, honestly, like not having the money saved up really made me like, it put that fire, right? Like there's no choice. Like you gotta keep moving. And so, yeah, I would say that. And then just kind of understanding some of the systems, like you got to have systems in place, right? Because if you don't have systems, you're like reinventing the wheel. So like, for example, at first I was just emailing every person like, okay, hi, we have to do fingerprinting. Hi, we have to do TB. And then I was like, okay, I just need to make a document where I can have all the emails and I can just pull them, right? I try to do invoicing by myself. I almost had a stroke because, like you're adding up all the columns and, people can say, oh, you can use Homebase. I have Homebase. That's our login. But my staff knows if you get there 10 minutes early, just go ahead and clock in. But that sign-in sheet has to match contract time. So you can't clock in early on the sign-in sheet in the classroom. It's got to be the start of your shift. So if you're there at 7:20 and your shift starts at 7:30, the sheet needs to say 7:30, not 7:20. You'll get paid from 7:20 on, but we're going to get paid from the district from 7:30 on because we can't still 10 minutes, right? So it's really important for those timesheets to accurately reflect like the time slot. And we had to work on that. And yeah, so things like that are tough, I would say. And when you're starting out, and you guys know this, I'm sure, you're just everything, right? I clean the rooms, I check the mail, I send out all the emails, I make sure that the programming is done for the BCBA stuff. I do assessment if I need to. Like, it's not it's not a fancy job, right? For a long time, I don't think it gets fancy.
Yeah, I feel like the second I started bringing on people was the second I became a business person rather than an educational psychologist. It's like you are, so that I love that I have group practice. I would not trade it for the world. However, it is so much more than I ever anticipated. And I think it's something that people really need to think about before they consider if they're going to do that or not, but
yeah, absolutely. And, like on that note, another thing to consider is just kind of like where your strengths are. And, if you don't have a strength in something, like, for example, the invoicing for me was challenging because I was just really frustrated, like adding up minutes. So I called my sister. I'm like, hey, can I hire you to help me out so that we can do it together? Because if I have a second person, now it's easier, right? So just kind of figuring out where are your strengths. Okay, play on those. Where are your weaknesses? Get some help.
Yep. Farm it out. Yeah, absolutely. I had another question. Do you have to have I do want you to talk about NPA for a second, because that's actually something that I'm thinking about doing too. But beyond that question, I also am wondering, do you have to have like a more special or like more insurance because you are dealing with like potentially dangerous situations with your staff, like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the contracts, every contract that I've had, and I believe it's like a state SELPA contract in California, meaning that our, state SELPA organization, I think, made a master contract that it sends out to districts and then they adjust as they see fit. So essentially, that contract lays out what you have to have, and the districts will tell you, like for their district, what is the amount of insurance. So I used to be a little bit lower, but I want to say now it's like, I want to say it's 3 million, 6 million for any occurrence of like a sexual abuse, right? Which obviously, okay, that's something that, money cannot pay for that, right? So yeah, it should be really expensive. But then that translates into a cost for the business. And so I think total for this year for our insurance as well as workers' comp, want to say we probably spent around $30,000.
Yeah.
And that kind of, again, goes back to like that money in the account is all going somewhere. So you have to keep working to get bigger and bigger so that you have something left over. But of course, all the bills go up as you get bigger and bigger. So it's a little cycle.
Yes. All right. And non-public agency, talk about just kind of what that is and then how you go about becoming one or why you would.
Yep, absolutely. So a non-public agency in California is an agency basically that helps to provide services, and not to be confused with a non-public school, because that's a bit different. But a non-public agency, if you were to look at an IEP and look at all the services that can be offered, a non-public agency can offer those as well. So I think maybe why non-public agencies exist, and I don't know, I'm speculating here, is probably because there's not enough servicers to provide services throughout the state of California. So sometimes you're going to have to get people in, but you don't want to just bring anybody in, right? Because they may not understand what the services are, or they may not be properly credentialed. So the non-public agency status allows you to provide services that align with the credentials that you have. So for me, because I'm a credentialed special education teacher, credentialed school psychologist, credentialed school counselor, and then my counterpart, I have a friend who helps me. He's a school psychologist. We were able to put all of our credentials onto the NPA paperwork, which means we can provide like career transition, educational counseling, one-to-one behavior aid services, behavior design. So you basically go through the list of services, and if you have a person who can provide those services like an OT or an SLP that you can make a part of your company, then you can get that cleared in your non-public agency and you can then offer your services. So essentially a non-public agency is an agency that offers support specifically for IEP services, which, going back to what I said earlier about psychoeducational assessment, think about psychoed assessment. That's not a service on the IEP. So that's why NPA doesn't clear that. You should be able theoretically to go to a district and say, hey, my business offers psychoed assessment. Can I, get a contract with you? I tried to do that last year before we became an NPA, and the district said, call me back when you're an NPA. But they have nothing to do with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, because lots of districts are hiring people to do contract psych assessment, but we have speech and language therapy. We have, I have a credentialed special education teacher, and both of those people could be providing services for kids in public schools if needed. And so I've been like toying with that idea of becoming an NPA just so that, because I anticipate having those kinds of services. So that's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, I would say just get the packet. Have to, I think the first thing you need to do is become a custodian of records with the Department of Justice, which basically means that you can get fingerprints sent to you so that you can clear fingerprints, right? So you don't run fingerprints yourself, but you get a number, and now your agent, the non-public agency you'll eventually have, can receive fingerprinting so that you're able to see the backgrounds of the people that you hire. So that's
thank you for that, because that's on my list of things to do too. And not even if I was going to become an NPA, but just because I'm still like kind of getting all my ducks in a row in terms of like what I want to have for my people on staff.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. You can text me or email me and I can tell you how I started that too. But I would say that's the first thing if you want to be an NPA, become a custodian of records, and then you can ask for the packet from the state, and they have like different designees for each area. So you email that designee, and I think the first thing they're going to ask you is, are you a custodian of records? Because that's kind of like, it's like a little, this ball has to roll and then the next one can.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Jessica. Business savvy.
Well,
no.
Gosh, we're both sitting here taking notes.
Barely. I mean, I want to take notes from everybody else who talks about like some practice and therapy and like getting credentialed with insurances in that way. That's what I'm looking at.
Well, yeah, we're hopeful that we'll have different people on doing lots of different things. And like, there have been people who you have worked with who you think could share information. Like, we're kind of opening the podcast to LEPs and also people who might help LEPs do different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jessica, final question. and you kind of answered what you would do. So I'm gonna reframe it. If you were giving advice or encouragement to somebody who is starting out their path to LEP, what would you tell them?
I would say it's definitely worth it if you care about kids. Like money's going to come, but you have to care about kids first, because if you don't have that passion, it's just going to be like any other job. Go do a job like real estate where you can make a whole bunch of money on every sale if you don't really care about what's happening with kids. But if you care about kids and you have that passion, the money is going to come. So make that your priority and absolutely go for it.
I love that. Oh, that why, right? It really just drives everything.
Mm.
So that is so awesome. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. It was very cool. Like you have just kind of, am I allowed to say badass on our podcast? Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
I'm going to say it. Yes. Okay. Like she's pretty badass, right? I mean, like she's got this massive, yeah. And if people want to connect with you, where should we send them?
I think Practical School Psychology on Instagram is probably the best. I try to keep up with the Facebook stuff, but I'm not so great at it. Instagram's so quick and easy, Yeah. So I would say Instagram's probably best. LinkedIn's okay. You can also use my email.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll put those in the show notes then, so people can get in contact with you. But again, thank you so much, Jessica. I learned a lot. I got to go become a custodian of records.
Yeah.
That's on my to-do list for sure. But yeah, so that wraps up another episode. And I don't know, Jana, what do we want to say? We got to wrap it up.
Keep listening in, and thank you for listening to this. And we hope you learned a lot. And thank you to Jessica.
We did. Yeah, all right. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast. Episodes can be found at empowerlepcollaborative.com. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, or if you have any questions for us, don't hesitate to connect. We would love to learn more. Jana can be found at jana@empowerlep.com, and Bethany can be reached at bethany@lepcollaborative.com.